Hello everyone, my name is Marian Guevara. A huge hello and a huge thank you to anyone who is clicking on this video or who is checking out the channel. Whether you are an old subscriber or a new subscriber, thank you very much. Your viewership is always appreciated. So today I will be talking about my favorite authors. Now, for an author to be considered a favorite of mine, I've had to at least read and loved 4 or more of their works. Why 4? I don't know, that's just an arbitrary number I have chosen. But another major criteria, and the main criteria I follow when it comes to deciding who's a favorite author, if I sit down, pick up their book, open it up, and I'm about to read it, it should feel like I'm coming home. So without further ado, let's get started. I have 6 authors here to talk about. Forgive me if you hear a bit of rain. It started raining before I recorded, but I'm sure it will lend the video a nice ambiance. So the first author, my first favorite author I'm going to discuss is F. Scott Fitzgerald. I have read almost all of Fitzgerald's novels. The only one I haven't gone to yet is This Side of Paradise. I have read nearly all of his short stories, and the first book I've ever read from him was obviously The Great Gatsby. One of the main reasons I love reading from Fitzgerald, not only just from The Great Gatsby, but his other works, is his prose. I think his prose is absolutely beautiful. I adore it. And beautiful prose in general is just something I love, and it's always a major plus for me when it comes to reading any book, honestly. I love the way that Fitzgerald is able to just succinctly capture a human emotion and describe it in such an evocative way. Beautiful prose can feel loaded with meaning, loaded with imagery. I know that there have been several cases where I come across a beautifully crafted sentence and I see the way the author has chosen these specific words and structured them in this certain way, and it just clicks for me. Clear images are conjured up in my mind. Maybe the sentence is able to tap into a memory I have, and so in my head I have images and memories going on at the same time, and beautiful prose at the end of the day just stimulates my mind, and I think that's what I really love about it. I do feel that people can be reductive with regards to Fitzgerald and his works. I've seen plenty of people claim that, he just writes about rich people and rich people problems. However, in response to that, I say, you write what you know, and Fitzgerald was writing from a particular time and place, from a stratum society that, he bore witness to, that he was deeply entrenched in, that he was incredibly, intimate with. So naturally, it would bleed into his work. And the thing is, Fitzgerald has gotten me to care about these characters that I have no similarities with. I think that's commendable when an author is able, through his writing, to get you to care about people who don't share your walk of life at all. Now, moving on to my next favorite author, we have Thomas Hardy. I've read 5 of his novels and a good number of his short stories. For those who don't know, Thomas Hardy was a Victorian author, and he's mainly associated with naturalism, realism, and his stories mainly focused on English rural life. So a lot of his characters are from that class within society. Far from the Madding Crowd was my first read from him, and I would recommend this being a starting point for you with regards to Hardy. This is like the one that ends relatively happily. The rest of the books, not so much. That's sort of like his trademark. They end pretty sad. Reading a Hardy novel is like a very emotionally distressing homecoming for me. But yeah, there are several things that I love about his works. One of them is his exploration of the psychology of his characters. You see these characters make certain decisions, how they're informed by their worldviews, and how these worldviews are shaped by the societal constraints and the social mores of that time. You may not agree with the decisions that a character makes. You might even find them frustrating, but I think Hardy does a great job of laying out a character's personality, establishing, their worldview, and then showing you, the reasoning behind their actions and how it springs forth from this personality, from the way they view the world. But on the other hand, I do feel that there is a Greek tragedy type of flair to Thomas Hardy's works, that fate is always intervening at an inconvenient time and oftentimes to the detriment of characters. Thomas Hardy's characters are creatures of emotion, of rational thought. However, at the end of the day, they are still pawns to fate and they are subject to its whims. The rain has decided to pick up, so I turned on this light. Funnily enough, it is connected to another point that I love about Thomas Hardy's works. And that's his descriptions of the natural world. The way that Hardy describes nature is just breathtaking. And interestingly enough, nature will often mirror the human conflict going on in the story. So you have this very, at times, melodramatic, highly entertaining, emotional conflict going on, but it's set against this very lush, rich backdrop. Next, for my favorite authors, we have Wilkie Collins, and talk about an author who can craft a highly entertaining plot. So for those who don't know, Wilkie Collins was a contemporary and friend of Charles Dickens. I actually prefer him over Dickens. He is mainly associated with the sensation novel, which I suppose you can call the proto-thriller. They mainly focused on or touched on social taboos at the time, or that explored a lot of the societal anxieties of that day and age. I have read 5 Wilkie Collins books. I have enjoyed all of them. His 4 major works are The Moon White, Moonstone, Armadale, and No Name. And I would say they're all over 400, 500 pages, depending on the edition you have. He pens chunky books. However, none of them felt like a slog to me. This man is able to pen a 500, 600 page book written with Victorian prose, and yet it feels like a breeze. I don't feel as if I'm pushing myself to continue. That's how engaged I am when reading a Wilkie Collins novel. And you have plot elements that they may not be completely new to you. I'm sure Collins would have gone on to influence other authors, but at least to me, they feel fresh. Even if a book of his was written like in the mid-19th century, it still feels fresh to me. Another thing that I also really love is his female characters. If you're worried about weak female characterization in classics, try Wilkie Collins. He has penned some great female characters. I mean, Marian Housecombe from The Woman in White, one of my favorite literary heroines. There's Magdalen Vanstone from No Name, Lydia Gwilt from Armadale. I really enjoyed Madame Pratolungo from Poor Miss Finch. I always try to snag up any Wilkie Collins I haven't read yet, because I know when I open up this book, I'm going to be in for a highly entertaining time. A lot of twists and turns, some fascinating characters, and I'm so happy to find a classic author where, it doesn't matter if they wrote a big, thick book. I'm going to be ready to dive right in. Moving on to my next favorite author, we have Flannery O'Connor, and this woman was just operating on another level. I have read her novels, I've read almost all of her short stories. I still have a handful to get to, and that's intentional because I just don't want to be done reading from this woman. Similar to Fitzgerald, Flannery O'Connor was writing from a particular time and place. In her case, it was the American South in the 1950s. There's this quote from her from a TV interview that she had that I really like, where she says that she thinks a serious fiction writer describes an action only in order to reveal a mystery. And just know that when you read a Flannery O'Connor story, that there is something always happening that's deeper than what's presented to you. There's something mystical, something spiritual. There's a spiritual war going on in her stories. And they're just manifesting in these tales of, grotesque freaks and their shenanigans in southern towns. The first thing I ever read from Flannery O'Connor was her short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find. And I do recommend you try Flannery O'Connor through that short story. I remember reading it, going into it blind, and just coming out of it shocked. I did not expect it to end the way it did, or to see the plot move in that direction. And yet, after I finished reading it, I knew there was something much more present in the story. In her book, Mystery Manners, it has a lot of her essays. She concludes one with this: the writer operates at a peculiar crossroads where time and place and eternity somehow meet. His problem is to find that location. And I think that's exactly what happens in an O'Connor short story. You have time, place, and eternity converging in one location. So now we move on to some newer favorites. And if you are a returning viewer of this channel, this should be no surprise to you. And that is Josiah Bancroft. I have read the Books of Babel, I've read the Hexologists, I've read his short story collections, I've read his poetry collection, I've read nearly everything by the man. Yeah, he's just one of my favorite authors, and I don't exaggerate when I say that this book and this series had a chokehold on me, has a chokehold on me. I'm sure every reader comes across a series that just completely enthralls them and just feels like it was specifically made for them. And that's the Books of Babel for me. I had such a visceral reaction to binging this series. I kid you not. And then, of course, the world building. Oh my goodness. Whenever you hear someone talk about Senlin Ascends, they are going to mention how this world feels unique, how it feels original compared to other fantasy books that they have read, and I think rightly so. Inventive world building that deviates away from the norm, is similar to beautiful prose for me, in the sense that it stimulates my mind, gets the gears going. When you have an author describing something that, may be a bit more difficult to imagine, I don't know, my mind views it as sort of like a challenge. Seeing them put this image that was in their heads, place it in words on a page, and then just trying to reconstruct it from that in my mind's eye is so enjoyable for me. Bancroft ultimately allows his imagination to take him wherever he wants, and I just find that to be a ride in and of itself. A creative world building adds spice to the entire reading experience, and I just love that. Another thing of note is that Josiah Bancroft has beautiful prose. That's, once again, a running theme throughout this video. It's one thing to have imagination, like a lot of people have that, but to be able to convey it, describe it in a way that is beautiful but then also accessible, that in itself is commendable. And Josiah Bancroft has done that. I will forever treasure that time I read Senlin Ascends, because not only did we get beautiful prose, not only did we get character arcs that felt believable, not only did it have a driving force that I felt invested in, but it was done in such a really great amount of time. Not even 400 pages, this book. Like, it truly did kind of blow me away and hook me in. And I know that's not going to be the case for everybody. I know there are some people who have read this book, left it feeling, that was fine. But I think that makes it even more special. The fact that there was something in this book and something in me that just connected. And that makes it all the much more special to me. And what solidifies it as a favorite and solidifies Josiah Bancroft as a favorite. Now the last favorite author I have to show you is Susanna Clarke. Now I've read almost everything by her, except for one book. I have read Piranesi, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and The Ladies of Greece Do, and I've loved everything. And her books just feel right up my alley. The vibes of them just feel so suited to me. First thing to note, she has amazing prose, so she just hooks me in with regards to that. But then I also love the way she approaches fantasy and the way she explores magic in her worlds. Magic in Susanna Clarke's world, it retains its sense of mystery. It feels like something to be in awe of. I feel that when it comes to like hard magic systems, magic can just be viewed as just a set of powers that you have or don't have. But with Susanna Clarke, magic feels amorphous. Magic feels, I don't know, something hidden, and it ought to be hidden. Something always eternally out of our grasp. And it's that sense of mystery that makes it so attractive. I also love that she's able to combine different genres that I love. For instance, in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell and The Ladies of Greece Do, she's combining, fantasy, but then also this Jane Austen-esque type of classic. And then within her worlds, within her stories, there's always this feeling of whimsy, but then there's this also encroaching sense of darkness that's always, there. It's lingering in the background. It may not always be the focus, but it is present. I knew after reading Piranesi and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell that Susanna Clarke was going to be a favorite author. Like, she writes fantasy that scratches an itch for me. She's able to balance that whimsy, that darkness, and I like the way she's able to explore characters well. Provide us with interesting, intriguing characters, but then also explore larger themes. Everything kind of just feels harmonious in a sense. And yeah, I look forward to more Susanna Clarke. I don't know when's the next book that she's going to write comes out, but I'll be there and I'll be waiting. So those are my favorite authors. Please let me know down in the comments if any of our authors overlap, or if not, let me know who are your favorite authors and what is the reason that they're your favorite. So yeah, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!